In the last lectures, we learned how to spin up that server, and that we got a request object with information about the incoming request, and a response object that we can use to send back a response. Let's now connect both request and response. Instead of printing some request data to the console, which of course doesn't do much for us, let's instead start writing a very simple web server that does different things depending on which route we enter. So depending on which / whatever part we enter here. So let's say for /nothing, we want to load a page where the user can enter some data, which we then store in a file on the server once it is sent. We can do this by, first of all, parsing the URL. I'm storing it in a new constant, and I do this by accessing request URL. Remember, that was something like //test, whatever we entered. I will then add an if statement and check if URL is equal to just /, and only this will match. By the way, the triple equal sign means that this will only be true if URL is both a string and has that value. So now here, if that is the case, I want to return a response which holds some HTML that gives the user an input form and a button that will send a new request in return. And that will not be a GET request, by the way. So let's do that step by step. Let's copy this code here and put it into this if statement. And here I will write a HTML document with a head, maybe a different title, enter message. And the body will now not hold a h1 tag, but instead a form. This is a default HTML element, of course, with an input of type text, let's say, and a button. And this will be super ugly because we have no styling, but it's about the functionality for now. That button tag must be closed, by the way. The button will be of type submit, so that it submits the form, and that will be some default HTML behavior we're using here, where a button with type submit in a form element will send a new request, and we'll configure that request in a second. Let's first give the button a caption, send. And now on that form element here, we add an action, which is basically the URL this request, which will be generated automatically, should be sent to. And I will use /message here, and this will automatically target the host it's running on, so localhost in our case here, localhost 3000 to be precise. And then we define the method, the HTTP method that should be used. And there we previously saw, if we expand this, that we got a GET request, which is the default if we enter a URL. Well, here we're not entering a URL. Instead, we want to send a so-called POST request. There is a limited set of HTTP verbs you can use. GET and POST are the two most important ones. A GET request is automatically sent when you click a link or enter a URL. A POST request has to be set up by you by creating such a form. There also are some other ways by using JavaScript, but we'll ignore them for now. So in HTML, we create such a form and we define that the method should be POST. And this will send a POST request to /message. And the cool thing about form is it will not just send such a request, it will also look into the form, detect any inputs or related elements like selects we might have. And if we give that input a name, which we should, message, it will also automatically put that message into the request it sends to our server. So now here, when we visit just localhost 3000 /nothing, we will return a response where we render this HTML code. Now let's also put a return statement in front of resEnd. This is not required to return a response, but to return from this anonymous function and to not continue this code, because we return prior to it, and this will quit the function execution. And we must do this because I told you that after resEnd, we must not call any other resWrites or resSet headers. But this would happen if we not return, because then it would just continue execution with these lines. I don't want that. If we make it into the if statement, we should also quit here. We should exit out of this function. With this, Let's restart the server by quitting it with Control-C and restarting it with Node app.js. And let's reload this page on localhost 3000/nothing. And we see my input and the send button here. Again, not super pretty, but it's working. Now let's make sure that if we enter something when we hit send, we see this, that we now not only see this, but that something else happens. By the way, we do see this because now the URL is /message, and /message does not make it into this if statement, and therefore this code runs. But we want to do something else, so let's do that in the next lectures.